Well, currently at the moment, I'm a business teacher, um, and I have just been teaching business administration in one of our young offenders custodial establishments in London. Um, and that's been quite an eye-opener, and it's really encouraged the passion that I have, that I feel I have, about education and young people. And I think one of the things is that we have a problem with them at the moment, and they don't understand how important education is. So even by teaching within the prison, that's given me a much clearer understanding of education all around. And not only just that, is that, you know, it's funny that you're doing something on creativity. Teachers have to be really creative in order to get the young people engaged, for them to understand, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. They haven't been effective in using their creativity in the normal sense of the word. They're very creative of being entrepreneurs on the streets, but not in a way that's going to help to progress their lives, in a way that, you know, whatever we call the norm in society is acceptable. Selling drugs, and they know how to do that very well. So one of the things that I did when the first initial work went on the blackboard, and they said, we can't do this, I said, yes, you can. Mm-hmm. Just think of what you do. And we're not going to be discussing drugs or how you sell it, but who are your customers? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you sort of mark out what you want? How do you get your money in? And they went, oh, yeah. So they realized that, but I think there's a disconnect with creativity for them to progress in life, use their thinking, be who they were born to be, opposed to what they think the pressures and the peer pressures on outside. So the two things collide, and then we lose them completely. So I think, and because we've lost them completely, we can't really, which is what we're trying to do generally in a classroom, stick them in a classroom and say, right, we're going to do English today, or we're going to do maths, and we're going to do, you know, Pythagoras theorem, and you're going to understand it, and expect them to get it. They don't get it. They've alienated themselves in that respect. So it really has to be an alternative, a really deep core understanding, in order to get right back to the core of them, to bring them back up to a level where you can communicate, where you can get them to think for themselves. You know, I think when we met, we talked a little bit about Paulo Freire, and you know, we talk about our curriculum, but we don't actually do that. And that's what I try to do. And that's how I try to drag out the creativity, about them thinking about what they're doing and challenging themselves and asking the right questions to get the answers. And then you see a whole world opened up in front of you with them. And they did things that no prison officer or prison guard could believe that came from those individuals. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and you're going against the wind of the sail of everyone else.
I'm so glad that you brought up one of my heroes in education, Paulo Freire, the author of The Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Classic. And
fabulous book.
Fabulous book. Yeah. And for writing things like The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire was persecuted. He was, yes, you know, he had to endure prison, you know, so he was in the same situation as the people that he was advocating, basically. You know, he was, but also when you talk about the young offenders and selling drugs, etc., it reminds me, like yourself, as you know, I'm also a business teacher, and many of my students, 16 to 19-year-olds, when I was teaching them entrepreneurial skills, they'd say, but miss, I can make so much more money selling drugs. Why would I do that? I can make so much more money doing what I do. And
they all say that, don't they?
Yeah, you know, so, yeah. And I would say, well, yeah, you can make a lot of money selling drugs, but when you have to go to prison, when you're caught, that's going to be a bit lonely, isn't it? And they said, no, it's not, because family's there.
Yeah, they absolutely don't believe it. I had students in there that have had their last 6 birthdays key birthdays in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd really drill down on that until they absolutely felt the pain of it. And it said, you know, you're going to be 21 next year. It's such a phenomenal birthday. You should not be spending it in prison. And they don't get it because all of their friends are in prison.
Absolutely.
You know?
Exactly.
And it doesn't make any sense.
I had the same experience, and these were, you know, I was teaching in a further education college, so these are youngsters who are not even in the institution. But the important point here is that so many people will say, well, we're all creative, everyone can be creative, and everything we do is creative. And yet we're talking about something ethic, you know, the difference between
That's fundamental.
ethical, yeah, it's the ethics, you know. So selling drugs, we can be very creative in how we market our drugs, etc., but is it ethical? And I think so many people forget the ethics in creativity. Have you noticed that as well, Olivia?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because it's got to the stage where the young boys, their mindset is saying, well, miss, which of us are you ever going to see that's not been to prison? Every young person goes to prison. And to be quite honest with you, you can't tell the difference in ethnicity. So you can't use ethnicity as an issue because they're all the same in the prison. They're all the same. They look differently, but they think the same. They behave the same. And some of them come from very good families. So we can't even blame the family. So something is very, very wrong how we are engaging our young people in school and how we are making education be education. It's not transformation, it's not transformative, it's not allowing teachers even to be as creative as you need to be to help that student, to bring them to a place where creativity can open up. I think we've lost the edge on, we talk about creativity, but I agree with you when saying, you know, teaching for creativity or being creativity is two different things. Absolutely two different things.
Yes. So teaching creatively is very different to teaching for creativity. And that's, and as you say, the education that is compulsory education, the 10 years or 12 years of compulsory education is very often limited in terms of how their creativity skills are developed. And very often you and I have experienced a lot of our transformational education outside of the compulsory school system.
Yes, absolutely. It's not in, but we talk about it, and we talk about it when we're assessed as teachers and when Ofsted's coming in, because it's supposed to look creative and that sort of thing, but it's not the long-term thing, and that's what's missing. I think that's a connect that's just not there at all at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting when you say that when we have an Ofsted inspection, things are done to make it appear to be a lot more creative than it is. In my experience, when I used to inspect, I hardly ever noticed creativity. And the reason I didn't notice it is because it's not in the common inspection framework. So the teachers they knew they had to cover maths and English and IT skills and various other things, but creativity was never an item on the common inspection framework, and therefore it was not their top priority.
I think one of the things, I totally agree with you. At the prison that I was in, I was given a very large room and it was very grotty. And, you know, 6 of the boys helped to tidy it up. We painted it. The governor came on board and we had really super duper photocopy machines. And the whole idea was that everyone that needed anything to be prepared, be it posters, be it booklets, everything in terms of paperwork that they were sending out to go to printers, the boys did it in that room. Now, I didn't say to them, you have to, you know, the teacher wants this or the officer wants this to be done, so draw this or draw that. It was fantastic to actually watch how they created things and how their minds, when they actually got something that was totally engaging, how they got together. You saw them, boys who normally hate each other and normally fight, were getting in and they were drawing using the computers, creating stuff, creating posters. So we know it can be done.
Well,
So
this is all to do with the purpose of education. Like, what do we think is the purpose of education? Is the purpose of education to create human beings that conform in society, that fit the position that has been reserved for them? Is that what we're doing? Or are we, to use the metaphor of lighting the fire, are we just being catalyst to light the students up and become who they want to be? And that is considered to be more risky.
yes, I totally agree with you. I think it's about conformative, being, them all being conformed to a particular way. It's about the old Alice and Wolf type thing where they're talking about getting people ready for the marketplace, to go into a specific, being funneled into a specific road. But unfortunately, how society's turned out, we haven't got the room for them to go and do those sort of jobs. They're having to be creative, to be entrepreneurs in order to make jobs. The shops are closing down, companies are closing down. So where is the balance? Are we actually teaching to help them? And I would say at the moment we're definitely not.
Well, I mean, it's common knowledge that the current schooling system in Britain, for example, the current schooling system was created to feed the industrialized society, to make them ready for working in the factories or in industrialized jobs.
Sections, yes, yeah.
And now that we're moving into a different age. We're moving from the age of industrialization into
to education actually being a commodity, and that's how they're treating education, as a commodity. Who gets it? Who gets the best education in what field? Can you afford it? Which is
well, we're going back to the past, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going back to the days where there was like a world of difference between the elite and the
It's really funny. It's a very interesting environment to be in. It's so interesting to watch and see how education's playing out. It really is. It's phenomenally interesting, but it's also, I think it's so dependent on teachers trying to educate not just the children but the parents of why education needs to be embedded in their lives, because we're just losing them. We're losing too many children.
Well, my own belief about that is rather controversial. For me, it's a contradiction in terms to say that education needs to be compulsory. For me, it's like education we need to have freedom of choice, and that is controversial because a lot of people, as we both know, would not send their children to school if it wasn't compulsory.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And I have nothing against homeschooling, providing people are actually going to homeschool them rather than just sit there and be abused or not get anything done. I know enough people that have homeschooled their children and they're now just qualified as doctors. So it is possible, but again, it's about the parents having the knowledge and the ability and the capability to push through the system, understand the system, which seems to be a minefield for most ordinary parents. Even with the changes in the exams results, most of them, even right as we speak right now, don't understand the changes and what the changes means with the A levels and the AS gradings. They have no idea. And then suddenly the child wants to go to university and they said, well, you haven't got, the right grades. And they're thinking, oh, but they've passed. They haven't got the understanding of what it means and how to select what they need to select to make the best choices for their children.